stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Barr.
Here.
Giovanini.
Here.
Eckhoff.
Here.
Callis.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Gaber.
Here.
Willie.
Here.
Thank you. I call for a meeting of the Civic Center Authority with no business for the Civic Center. We will adjourn that meeting and go into the consent agenda, which we have 2 items to look at.
I motion acceptance of the consent agenda. I'll second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Jamie. Roll call, please.
Barr.
Yes.
Giovanini.
Yes.
Eckhoff.
Yes.
Callis.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Bradshaw.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Gaber.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Thank you. On the regular agenda, we have a presentation from Mr. Guerrero.
Hello, Jose Guerrero. Trying to get side-by-sides, UTVs legal. Does anyone know what that is? They don't have a picture here. They're similar to the golf carts, a little more advanced than the golf cart, of course so. Like currently the way it sits, you can't have them even with turn signals, lights, pretty much everything with the golf cart. I think probably be pretty reasonable if you guys would be able to make side-by-sides legal in town. Sorry, I'm getting nervous now. I noticed, I see these electric scooters and mopeds and electric bicycles out, not only in town, but also out on 66 heading out to Walmart. And I don't want to take away their freedoms or anything, but I'm just wondering how those electric scooters and mopeds like that, how is that more legal than having one of these side-by-side? I got a picture of anyone wants to look at one of what a side-by-side would be. And obviously it would have a DOT windshield, turn signals, a slow-moving vehicle sign on it, and pretty much everything that a golf cart would have. I know there's one exception that would be different from a golf cart. Is that currently the way it is now, golf carts, you can't have them go faster than 25 miles an hour. That piece of equipment would be able to go faster than 25 miles an hour. However, I don't understand not taking it faster in town. It just has the capability of it. If there's any questions, I would appreciate that. If anyone wants to know more information on that.
So it's basically a Ranger.
Yeah, pretty much a Polaris Ranger or a Gator, but, obviously with turn signals and slow moving signs.
I'm going to direct my question to Chief Wolford. Is there state statutes with regard to these type of vehicles on roadways like you follow for golf carts?
Yeah, so it'd be classified as an off-highway vehicle, the issue with the speed is a low-speed vehicle, is why when we did the research, we chose golf carts only, because they didn't have the capability to exceed 25 miles an hour, and so that really is the main difference, because we did have people petition us for Gators and Polaris and that kind of thing. So that was the decision that was made when the ordinance was passed to limit it only to golf carts. And the state statute prohibits them all from operating on a state highway. So that's why you cross at the intersections.
Yes, I read that. I also noticed that some of our other towns, not Pontiac of course, but some other towns, such as some smaller towns, I understand they're smaller, Solomon, Odell, Genoa, I see Gators or side-by-sides driving around there. I don't know that we maybe look at that, for some. I'm not sure about Fairbury. I know I see Fairbury, but I'm not sure that's legal there. You see one thing, legal is a different thing. But I pretty much just want to bring it up in consideration, possibly have that
deemed the gator like apparatus as a work vehicle. And it was permissible, what happened was, I recall, the high school took their gator down Elm Street for the baseball for the Pearl. And, of course, they were in violation. The first day they did it, they was not. We revisited it, Alan, you remember that?
Yes.
And
And we followed, I think we incorporated the state statute for our definitions in our ordinance. So we can, I can look at that statute again, but we did have a provision that's in our ordinance now that, for instance, like when you were working at KSR, if someone rode their lawnmower to KSR for service, we said that was fine. Or if they were taking it like to mow the neighbor's yard or something, we used the thing for intended use, but not for transportation. Whatever, we incorporated the state statutory language on neighbor's vehicles, I'm what they call it. And I haven't read the statute for a long time, the question hasn't come up about whether it's broader than what we've incorporated. So we are limited by what the state, if we're doing what the maximum the state says we can do, we're limited. We can't do more than they permit us to do.
And we're not doing what the maximum state says. The state, however, gave non-home rule communities the ability to decide what they wanted to do and what types of off-highway vehicles they would allow.
So they can't be licensed by the state?
Excuse me?
They can't be licensed like a car?
Correct. They would need a VIN and they would need a DOT certification. And so there are certain vehicles that can be licensed by the state that have, I can't remember the name of the term, but it's a kind of long license, but there's a couple in town that are electric vehicles and they're manufactured for the road, but they're not golf carts, but they get a license plate by the state.
Do these vehicles have speedometers?
Yes. Most of them do. I suppose some models perhaps don't. But I know a Polaris Ranger and most of them do. That's what others.
So you own one right now?
Yes. I don't only use it in town. I also use it at my grandparents out in the country. And during the winter time, we were going back and forth because of the snow. We were plowing with it. Just trying to help people out. But I would much rather, if I was going to drag it in town, be 100% legal with it. And not only that, my grandparents were going to come take it into town or have it parked at my house, take it into town, and maybe run a few errands, and just pretty much use it for a golf cart, but it has more capabilities. So we could use it as a work vehicle or a golf cart.
Well, as you've seen, it's been investigated several times, but nobody's brought up the idea in the recent years.
Well,
that I can think
I
of.
believe it was just recently, within the year 2022, was it allowed that the state allowed the local ordinance, the local town to decide for themselves. So until this year, I don't think it would have been legal, anyways, to ask. But Illinois pretty much said that the local towns can decide for themselves accordingly.
Well, we'll put some people together and take a look at it, see if there's any that would make it worthwhile for the community, and we'll take a good look at it. But
Okay.
we'll see what happens. All right?
You alluded to the motorized bikes, and I think we've already addressed that.
Yes, sir. The motorized bicycles fall under a completely different statute. They're a low-speed gas bike, which the state recognizes them as all the same rights as a bicycle. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's how they're looked at in the statute. So that's why a low-speed gas bicycle can be out driving on roads and/or a bicycle can be driving.
Now, with this warmer weather, we see a lot more of that.
Yes.
I think I addressed on an ordinance, like with the bicycles, the state pretty much did let them have it. But with the electric or gas card, I think it's up to the town ordinance to decide how it's done. They have to
Well,
But
thank
that's
you
a
for,
different subject.
thank you for your input, and we'll look at it and see what we can do for you. Moving on, bid award for the sanitary manhole replacement program. Brian, you're up again.
Last Monday, we opened bids for our sanitary manhole replacement program. We had one bidder, which was H.J. Epple and Company. Their bid was $295,916.40. Some of these manholes need to be completed prior to our lining project that will go on and was later this summer and was bid previously. And we would recommend awarding this contract to H.J. Epple and Company.
Any questions for Brian?
And underneath your estimate,
This was over our estimate. What we're seeing right now with fuel prices, that some of the bids are coming in higher than what we've seen in the previous years, and our numbers were kind of based on those older numbers that we had seen.
It's not only just fuel prices, there's a lot of federal money that's flooded the municipalities. There's a lot of public works projects that are going on right now.
Yeah, I heard from some other contractors that they said they did not bid because if they did not have the time to do the work, because there's enough other work out there right now.
How much over?
I think we're probably about 30% over really what we thought we'd be.
What is their completion date?
They have 40 working days to complete the project. So once we give a notice to proceed, then we can start that clock ticking.
So I have a question, not necessarily this, because you kind of just answered, but, do we have damages if they don't?
We do. It's standard language and the item specifications which we follow. So they are, depending on the type of contract, they're daily damages for the working day. So if it was a rain day, it would not be charged, for example. And then that's on a graduated scale based on the value of the contract.
Is that a common practice for us, or is that just because of the type of project this is?
It's language in every contract that we have.
And so who determines the length of days that, I guess I'm just alluding to the fact that we have a sewer project going on right now that is into almost 2 months and it's still not completed. And there was one last summer in my neighborhood that took an excessive amount of time, and neighbors were severely impacted by it. And it just seems like, that's why I was like questioning, do we, are we putting them to the fire for this, because,
So,
and I don't know how long it should take, it just seems like it's.
right. So what we look at on every project is we look at the major items and how long we think they'll take, and that's how we set our, we can either set working days or calendar days, and we typically use working days. And then what happens is what's called a controlling item. So if your controlling item is earthwork, like you have to do the earthwork before you can do something else, and it rains, you can't do earthwork. So a working day is not charged. So even though this contract is 40, it might take 60 or 65 depending on what the weather does for us. There's some other things like now supplies are sometimes an issue and they can't get, and that's one thing on the golf course project there. There's a manhole base we've been waiting for I think 2 months now, and we still don't have a date of when we're going to get it. So,
Those things are out.
so those things are out of the contractor's control. But then, what we do is we look at that controlling item, and then we look, can that item be done that day? If it can, then we charge a working day. Working days are only charged May 1st through November 30th per IDOT spec also. So, if you have good weather before or after that, you can work, but it may not be charged. And just because you're working does not mean it's a charged working day. So there are some things that the specs cover. Not every day is going to be a working day.
Well, it's only going to be worse with so many jobs that people have, because if there's no incentive to
Right. The other thing that we have not always been 100%. You know, we try and get these jobs done as quick as possible. Sometimes we've let a few days go here and there.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, because we just haven't, I think, had the desire to push it. I mean, it might, depending on the scale, it might be $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
So, but that's definitely out there that we can do that. But we have not really taken a contractor very often to that. So that's hopefully that's a little more information that not every day is a working day.
I'll motion.
Okay.
Accept the bid.
Motion by Kelly, second by Don Hicks. Roll call, please.
Giovanini?
Yes.
Eckhoff?
Yes.
Callis?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Bradshaw?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Gaber?
Yes.
Willie?
Yes.
Barr?
Yes.
Thank you. And now the hot mix asphalt maintenance project. Brian, you're still on tap.
This also bid last Monday, various locations through town. There was 2 bidders, Kankakee Valley Construction Company and H.J. Epple and Company. H.J. Epple and Company was the low bid at $850,853.77, and we would recommend awarding contract to H.J. Epple and Company.
Any discussion?
I'll second.
Motion by Bill Callis, second by Kelly. To approve that bid. Roll call, please.
Eckhoff?
Yes.
Callis? Lee?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Bradshaw?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Gaber?
Yes.
Willie?
Yes.
Barr?
Yes.
Giovanini?
Yes.
Capital project update.
There's a few projects going on now, like we mentioned, the Westview sewer project. I did not touch base with them today and didn't get an update, but as of Friday, they were hoping for completion on the 116 portion within a couple of days. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we do not have a date for that manhole base, which would be at the north portion of the project, which would be along the fairway of number 3 there. So their plan was to finish the installation of the sewer as best they could, and then start cleaning up some of the project area along 116 and start getting that tidied up a little bit. As soon as that base gets in, they would put that in and then complete that project. Indiana Avenue has also started. We poured 280 feet of multi-use path today, so that was a good start. Doesn't look like the next few days are going to be in our favor with the rain coming in, but right now we have from Cimarron Drive to the bridge on the creek there at the east end of the project, that's closed. All the old pavement's been torn out, the aggregate base is down. We're hopeful that maybe we'll get curves in on Wednesday and then continue to proceed with that project. I think that project has about 48 or 49 working days. I think it might be a little bit tight, but that'll get us into July. So just kind of a rough, and today was our first day that we could charge working days. And obviously as the rains come, that'll push those back a little bit. We do have another project that really has not started back again, that was left over from last year, and that's storm sewer, curb and gutter, and overlay on Mill Street from Reynolds south a couple blocks. Part of that also is Cardinal Court, which will be milled and overlaid. And the last I talked with Toby's on that was that their pipe crew would move from the sewer project over to do the storm sewer on Mill Street. And then we'll get that taken care of. Projects that have bid recently, we've had the manhole and the HMA streets here. We got sewer lining, which we brought, I think, the last meeting. Sewer lining, that's one where they're probably a few months out because of their backlog in work, which gives us time to get the manholes done so that they can have that ready when they are ready to come in. I have not talked, obviously, we just awarded this today, so I don't know when the HMA might begin. Currently designing a couple of concrete streets over by Washington School and the junior high, Prairie and Livingston. And then we've got a couple of the alleys behind some businesses that we need to take care of. And that right now is in design. Hopefully we can get that done in a few weeks and get that out to bid. Have not started design, but it's on my docket, is sidewalks on Reynolds Street, which we had talked about and approved in our infrastructure committee meeting, to get all those, we overlaid that, and I think that whole stretch has pretty much been overlaid within the last 10 years. And there's some ADA ramps and some other sidewalk areas that need upgraded and brought up to speed there, so we'll do that. We have bridge repair on Turtle Creek. We had talked about that a few months ago, I think, and some grouting on one of the Heiser Island bridges. So we've been in touch with Farnsworth, and they're going to be doing that design work so that we can get that out to bid. We're not quite sure. Even though we're taking off 2 inches of asphalt and putting 2 inches back, we're still required to do a load rating and a bridge analysis on that, and that will have to be approved by the Department of Transportation before we can move forward. So we're kind of working through the time frame on that, whether we get that done this fall or not. Our intersections at Madison and Plum and Madison and Oak, we've looked at that. We had our planners out there the last few years. We want to get that. We want to get the planters out of there, but for the purpose of getting the planters out of there, we're looking at bringing the curbs out, so that's a narrower one-lane street. We met with Farnsworth to discuss with them how that all fits into our master plan of our downtown area and how we want to proceed with that. So they're working on some plans that they'll bring back to us so we can review and move forward with that. And our sewer separation. We also have Farnsworth working on sewer separation on the north side. I believe those come back on the 16th. They open on the 16th?
Yes.
Award the 16th, okay. So that'll be coming back to this body here in a couple of weeks. And then our ITEP grant. We've worked on getting that out so we can put our request for qualifications together and get that out, and that'll be going out very, very soon. So that's kind of a rundown of the things that we are doing, will be doing in the...
Right, we did get some correspondence from the IDOT concerning 116 as well.
We did. That's not our project, but we heard from IDOT that they're planning to redo the pavement on 116 Howard Street from Pearl Street east to Route 66 there, and that is scheduled to be on a June letting. So I do not have a date of when they'll do it. I'm kind of in my own mind trying to figure out their speed on contracts and letting and all that, and whether they'll do some this fall or whether that will get caught by the weather or not. But that is coming, and that's one that I hear a lot about lately, so that's a welcome addition from IDOT.
What distance did you say from?
It'd be from Pearl Street east to Old 66. So all through town. Yeah. And there's a chance I forgot something, but I think I
There's
know.
a lot on that list.
Good list.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on.
I have a question, and maybe this is not somebody, the note about the asbestos work being complete. Will we be doing demolition ourselves, or are we going to get that?
The Washington Street properties we'll be doing ourselves. The Payson Street house we'll be doing. That one got blown over by the wind.
Oh,
Big hole in the side, and we're trying to get NICOR in to disconnect the gas. And then the 2 stories, we'll be contracting those out.
Bob,
Yes,
hit us up with referendum.
all right. David. Paving the way. You know, we've done this a couple times of trying a referendum to get street work done. We announced it that we passed a resolution placing it on the ballot a few months ago, and that's on the June 28th primary. And what we've been doing at a staff level is we've kind of been saying, what are the questions that have been asked? What is it that we can do to make this more palatable to the citizens? We've talked to you, we've talked to various committees, and so we're kind of taking a little different approach if this is something that you folks agree with. First off, we've gotten lots of questions, both with both referendums as well as this one. I already pay thousands of dollars in property tax. Why are additional funds needed? Well, let's take a look. First at the property tax bill. On your left is the property tax bill. This is a $3,500 a year property tax bill. You see that almost 2/3 of it goes to education. Education being District 429, District 90, and Heartland Community College. That $3,500, that's a total of $2,275. County and township make up 13% of that property tax bill, or another $455. And then lastly is the city share at $770. So you'll see that the vast majority of that $3,500 tax bill does not come to the city. And that's kind of difficult to get across, but that's what reality is. Now that as we move to the right, we're going to look at that $770. And 90% of that $770, or $695, goes to pensions, liability insurance, and the library. And $75 of that $3,500 tax bill can be used for other stuff. You know, the one question that always comes up as we start talking about the cost of the pensions, why don't you change the pensions? And we can't. The pensions, both in the revenue stream and the expenses, the benefits, are governed by the state of Illinois, and so we must follow those. So you'll see that out of that $3,500 tax bill, $75 is in discretionary spending. As we go down all of our revenue streams, we have discretionary money, and we have, I think we need back up one, David. Did we skip one? Skip me ahead two then. Of all of our revenues, other revenues, operating revenues of around $25 million, 72% of those are restricted. They have a dedicated expense that they have to fulfill, either by statute or by program. For instance, we bring in several $100,000 at the community center, and that's dedicated to the community center. All of the airport money that's brought in has to be spent at the airport, because the money is governed by the federal government. And so we're left with about $7 million in discretionary money of the $25 million. Now let's go back. The main discretionary funds is the sales tax. That's the 1 cent sales tax that we're already getting. That's $3.4 million. And the other ones are the telecommunications tax. And we're going to come back to that. That's a 5% tax on cell phones and landlines. Had somebody ask, what's a landline? And then the cable TV franchise is $115,000. Those two and the property tax are the only taxes that are assessed by the city. Sales tax, of course, is the, on all retail sales in the city. If you take that 3.4 million and divide it by the number of households we have, that's about $780,000. I'm sorry, it's retail sales of $780,000. So you'll see that the impact on the sales tax is significant from outside of the area. And then the other main discretionary funds are state income tax, Illinois use tax, Illinois cannabis fees, and Illinois corporate replacement tax. So that's that $7 million that we have discretion over. Let's go on now. So where does that discretionary money get spent? You know, this is basically a picture of the general fund. The general fund being the operational funds of the city. Administration, cemetery, public works, fire department, police department, recreation, and the ambulance. So in the middle column, that's the restricted money that each of those departments get. And you'll see that it's a very small portion. So take as an example, the police department has annual expenditures of $2.5 million. And they have restricted revenues, revenues that we have to spend on the police department of $199,000, which leaves about $2.3 million. Well, we're not going to operate the police department on $199,000, and so we have to take those discretionary funds and supplement. So over 90% of our discretionary funds go to fund those the general fund expenditures. We tracking so far? Okay. So, what funds are there that can be used for streets? Are there any restricted funds that can be used for streets? And of course, the one obvious one is the Illinois motor fuel tax. We get about $470,000 annually from the state of Illinois as our portion of the motor fuel tax. It's not based upon motor fuel tax collected in our city. It's based upon a formula that the state has derived. If we had zero motor fuel tax or fuel sales in our community, we'd still get the same amount. Or if we had, tremendous amounts, that would be our allotment based upon the formula that they use. We get $190,000 a year in FAU funds. What those are for our main arteries, we get credit for that. We don't actually get the cash, but we get a buildup of those funds, and then major projects are used. That's what we're using the bulk of on Indiana Avenue. Of the $1.5 million project, about 80% of that is federal FAU funds. We've used those up with Indiana, so now we're going to have to wait a few years before we can use those again. And tax increment financing has been extremely important for the street work that's been done in the city. All of the streets out on the west end of town that have been the stimulus for growth out there have been built with tax increment financing funds. All of the all of the bridges in town, we have, I think, about 6 bridges that have all been rebuilt with county and state funds as well as TIF funds. Major projects such as Indiana Ave, or not Indiana, but Elm Street, Ladd Street, all the way starting at Reynolds, all the way out to the city limits has been with TIF funds. And so, millions of dollars of street work has been financed with tax increment financing. Our TIF is expected to run out this year. We do have a request in for an 11-year extension. The state is granting 11-year extensions. That's going to be introduced by Senator Berrickman in the legislative session. And so they will still have that available. as we look at the motor fuel tax and say, how far does that go when it's plus or minus $50,000 for an overlay of a block of street, or it's $150,000 plus or minus to completely rebuild a block of street, you see that that doesn't go very far. That's why we've been saying that we need additional money to really attack our streets. I think everybody agrees that they need serious attention, but in order to give the attention necessary, we've got to find some additional revenues. Let's move on. So why was the sales tax chosen? Because that's going to generate the most amount of money. You know, we could look at, and the council could pass a utility tax, which would generate several $100,000. But that wouldn't be near of what the sales tax is going to generate. Let's take a look at that. This is the 1% non-home rule sales tax. So see, in 2016, we've got 1.2 million, and it's been pretty consistent in the 1.3 million for the next 4 years. Look what happened in 2021, jumped to 1.7 million. I think we all realize what the biggest factor of that is, and that's the Wallies out on the interstate. And as we look at what percentage of that additional 400,000 comes from the citizens of Pontiac, it's very minimal compared to that that's being pulled off the highway and filling up and buying food there. So this can have a real significant impact annually on our street projects. Second, unlike the 1 cent that we presently have, it does exclude food, drugs, and titled vehicles. If you remember, we're bringing in a little over 3.4 million, and so this is going to be just about half that. And the reason it's half is because it's excluding those basics of food and drugs, as well as the big ticketed titled vehicles. The third reason is the least amount of cost to the local taxpayers. So again, it's the power of the shopper of outside the community. Let's take a look at that. This is from Morning Consult. This is a U.S. spending report for December of 2021. This is a disposable income of $3,173. You'll see 15% of this would be subject to tax, or $475 of purchases. Not subject to tax is the 85%, or the $2,698. Now then, again, on the 1%, $475, that would cost a household $4.75 for that month. Now, other households are going to be different. This is just an average. Some are going to be more, some will probably be less. But it shows the impact of this shopper from outside the city. So let's keep that in mind, $4.75 per month. That calculates out to $57 per year per household, or a little over $248,000. $248,000 out of $1.7 million. So again, it's the least cost to the taxpayers. In addition, to help that, the city is considering, we talked about the telecommunications tax earlier, that we presently have a 5% tax on telecommunications, cell phones, landlines, of repealing that. And so that averages about $2.70 per month, which would cut in half the cost of the 1%. To put it in perspective, if we tried raising $1.7 million from the property tax, we would never get that passed. So don't, not suggesting that, Murph, but if we were, that $3,500 tax bill would have an additional $431 on it, compared to the 57, cut that in half of something about 28. So, next. Most, again, we beat this drum, well over 80% is paid for by the people who are going up and down the highway, coming in from our market area, and it's paid in small increments. Again, that 1 cent, you go out and you buy a $10 item, that's 10 cents. The $100 purchase is $1. So, and lastly, is most of the retail centers around us, around Pontiac, White, Streeter, Bloomington, Normal, have that, if not more. So, it's pretty common for retail centers to have this as a revenue source because of the power of the non-resident making purchases. Okay, so what will the funds be used for? We've kind of taken a little bit of slant on this. We're suggesting, this is kind of what we've pulled from people and from the council, 10% would be used to replace that telecommunications tax. Again, there's $144,000 in the city's budget that's dependent upon that. And again, we talked about to help offset some of the additional sales tax, repealing that. So we've got to plug in that $144,000 to replace that. And we're going to be losing the electrical aggregation revenue that we've been getting. So the balance of that would help to fund Rocket at the River, other community development activities. The second 10% would be to the ambulance service. Again, last August we started the ambulance, and we're starting to learn a lot from our months of operation. And it's going to, right now we're in an operational deficit, and we knew that going in, and we're going to be growing the service. We're going to be working with the hospitals we've talked about before on transfers, making proposals to the rural districts to expand that service. But yet, to ensure the adequacy of the service, we're going to take 10% and put it into the ambulance fund. Some of that will be used to help offset costs for people without insurance or inability to pay, and the balance will be used for a fund to replace equipment. We were extremely, extremely fortunate that we were able to utilize the ARPA funds to buy 4 ambulances. All of our first year of ARPA funds have been used to do that. However, we've got to make sure that we're generating sufficient revenues that will be able to replace those in a timely manner. I think what we saw before, that the quality of the equipment, the quality of the personnel is what drives the quality of that ambulance service. And so while we may have quality personnel, we have to make sure that we have quality equipment as well. And then lastly, street improvements. If you'll notice, the 80% is more than what we've been averaging for the last 5 years. So it's not like we're shortchanging the streets. And as we've looked at these street improvements, the one question that most everybody asks is, how do we know the funds will actually be used for what the council says? How many have heard that one? Yeah. And the first, and the first thing that sticks out, it doesn't say anything on the ballot about streets. Let's take a look at the ballot. This is what the ballot is going to say. Shall the city of Pontiac impose a home rule municipal retailer's occupation tax and non-home rule municipal service occupation tax, commonly referred to as the municipal sales tax, at the rate of 1% for expenditure on public infrastructure, for property tax relief, and for municipal operations in accordance with and subject to the provisions of a bunch of Illinois statutes. So as voters see that, they'll say, where does it say streets? And the reason the state says this is what the ballot has to look like. If Alan, well, if Alan's writing it, wouldn't fit on that screen. We'd love to be able to say, be used 10% for the replacement of the infrastructure, or municipal telecommunications tax, 10% for ambulance, 80% for street, but we can't. This is what we're stuck in. And one of the reasons is that this city council cannot commit to future city councils. We could have a turnover here, and next city council could say, we don't want to do that. So as we've thought through that, we've come up with this idea that we can, let's switch gears here, is let's issue a bond for street work, $7 million. And in so doing, you've committed the funds to the borrowers that they're going to get first dibs on the sales tax. So what we're talking about doing is taking $7 million up front, doing $7 million of street work, and then paying that over a 5 or 6 year period of time. And the sales tax receipts would be pledged to the debt service. Brian, why don't you come up and talk about what a $7 million street program would look like?
So the slide up there you see, that's the cover sheet for the HMA project that we just awarded earlier tonight. So you can see the area there, Deerfield Road, the subdivision with Franklin, Lawrence, and Bethany, Washington Street, Madison Street, a little bit of Reynolds, and so those areas right there, that was $850,000. So it's a decent amount, it's a decent program, but it is still pretty concentrated. It doesn't get out into a large part of the community. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what, and $850,000 is more than what we have done the last number of years. So there's TIF in that. It's not all our motor fuel tax. If we can go to the next. So here's what we're looking. These streets here, for the most part, are streets that we deemed over the last 7 to 10 years needed repair of some type and did not make our list, have not been done in that time frame. And they have not gotten any better on their own, so they're still on our list. And the yellow is basic overlays, mill and overlay, maybe an overlay over some A3 streets. The blue area that you see, that's not the river, the other blue area, that needs a little more extensive work. Maybe some curb and gutter, maybe a little bit of storm sewer to help some drainage. And obviously they're bigger projects. So we feel with $7 million, this is the kind of thing we can do. And we're looking at 12 to 14 lane miles of streets. So it's a fairly significant impact that we can have. If you remember, we're about 70, 80 centerline miles in town, so that'd be 140 lane miles. plus or minus. So about 10% of the blame miles we have out there, we can take a look at doing something with this bond. So it's really a way that we can attack a problem that we have. It's a way that we can get these things done, where, like I said, these streets have been on our list probably 7, 8, 9 years. And they haven't gotten done because we've run out of the motor fuel tax funds before we got to them. The other streets were worse off and chosen to be done instead.
Any questions for Brian?
And that's a, how long are we, that's a 1-year project? That's a 5-year project? What is it?
So we want to do as much as we can, as quick as we can. There's a couple of things that come into play. One is design time. So we've got some time to get these streets ready. The other is contractors, to be able to have the contractors that can come in and do them. We're hopeful that we could do them in 2 construction seasons with possibly a year or half a year of design time out there. So say a 3-year window with like a kind of a 5-year payback is kind of what we're looking at.
And then being able to turn around and do that again. One observation, this is using the 1 cent non-home rule sales tax. We're still going to have close to $500,000 of MFT money to attack those blues. And for wherever if in fact we get the TIF extension, we're going to be able to target those areas that are in the TIF. So this is just the new money. And again, when we take that step of borrowing, we've committed those funds till those bonds are paid off.
As development grows on the west side, the numbers can be inflated too.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I mean, you saw the 1 year of what happened. It's not going to be that drastic every year, but I think the trajectory that we see with traffic out there is going to continue to grow. And that's a whole other benefit of the 1 cent sales tax, is that it has growth built into it as opposed to being static. Okay. So, some key dates. In May, we want to have a town hall meeting, probably a series of town hall meetings. Voter registration deadline is June 12th. Early voting, it's just early, not early and often, voting of June 15th. Mail-in ballot request deadline June 23rd, and then election day on the 28th. So, last one. PavingTheWayPontiac.com, coming soon. It's going to be loaded with a lot of frequently asked questions. A lot of this information is going to be loaded up there. We really want to get the word out. This is going to be information. It's not going to be advocacy. It'll be just the facts. And I think that those facts, in my opinion, are very compelling. One question, I'll wrap it up with this. One question that we get a lot is now the time to be raising taxes? And, my response to that is, there's no good time to raise taxes. But by the same token, our streets are not getting any better. They're deteriorating further. And every day, there was several $100s of money that left the community from outside shoppers today that could have been paid in sales tax that would have gone to fund this project. I think that this has kind of been a work in progress, and may be appropriate for the council to say, that 10-10, 80%, the 80% with the bond is what we want to run with. Questions, comments?
Just One, I just, on the way in on the radio, Lincoln County had an ad on for early voting. And theirs begins on May 16th.
Okay.
So I.
We'll make sure that when this goes to www.pavingtheway Pontiac, that's the dates. I think this, we'll find out.
Well, I was just, concerned, we want to try to get as much information out before people have the ability to start.
Yeah,
voting.
yeah, and that's going to be, midweek this will be up. Start sending people to it.
And we have that illustrated map suggesting roadways on that site. So it's clear when you look at it, it's there in my neighborhood.
Great job.
Is there consensus that this is what we need to present, the 10-10-80 plan?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give the affirmation of that?
We'd like a motion to put that into effect and sure. Don, just seconded by Jason Lee. Roll call, please.
Barr,
Yes.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Eckhoff,
Yes.
Callis,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Bradshaw, yes, Myers,
Yeah.
Gaber,
Yes.
Willie.
Yes. If I could add one other thing, is that there's nothing magic about that $7 million. What we did is we picked that because we want to keep the bonds local so that we don't have to do a whole lot of underwriting and those sort of things. It's very well possible that we could even expand that a little bit. But think that this is a minimum, and if we can do more, we would. So that's it.
Great job.
Huh?
This was all derived upon Bob's bedroom ceiling, by the way. And it was, just goes to show you, he's always thinking of the community. Moving on, he brought up town meetings. There is a town meeting, May 10th, Tuesday, at the high school. This is going to be sponsored by Senator Barrett, Representative Tom Bennett, and the Department of Corrections. And we're going to be discussing the prison and its future and what's going on there. We've all seen Save Our Prison signs and different things. And it's taken about a month to get somebody from the department to commit to come and make these discussions viable. So this would be another adventure where we could inform about everything else that's coming along too. So we want to try to make that as a possibility. The more attendance we have, the better opportunity to get the word out. Okay. You'll all be getting flyers on this in your emails probably tomorrow. So, but it is Tuesday the 10th. Okay.
7 o'clock.
Yes. Other comments, says here, mayor's comments. I was really glad to see Draymond School did a cleanup out on 116. Did a great job by the Taco Bell and the car wash area there. Cleaned up the ditch and everything. They tell me they found $85 in cash in the ditch, so they were really thrilled too. Couple of things happened over the week, besides the activity Friday on the square, which turned out to be not much of anything other than a great exercise for our police department. There was a grand opening of the liquor and wine store, ribbon cutting and such. And then I found out that Acres Inn's people had bought Route 66 Licks ice cream. So I don't know if they kept the truck or not, but they got the ice cream, so that's important too. We have a lot of things coming up, and we do have a need for executive session. So I think I'm going to leave it at that, but please plan or try to plan on attending the 10th meeting. City council comments. Anything?
So are we gonna set other dates for these town hall meetings, or you're working on that?
We're working on that. We're trying to coordinate the calendar.
Got it.
Okay. Bob's company comments, but he'll save it for later. Public comment. Oh,
Liz, you want to talk about this coming weekend?
Yes,
Yes.
this weekend is our 16th annual Red Carpet Corridor Weekend. It actually just happens on Saturday. It starts in Joliet to Lexington, and it's always been a very successful weekend. We're very lucky here in town that the Community Arts Center has started their own festival that weekend. So the Swinging Bridges Art Festival will be taking place on Madison Street, and there's going to be tons of fine art. They also have, I think, a junior high and high school age showing, and they have vendors and they have bands. There'll be bands playing all weekend, food, and a marionette show I hear is supposed to be pretty fantastic. So, yes.
it's always fun time.
I think I left brochures last
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
Public comments.
Kelly asked the question I was going to ask, just for, public, because I have people asking me, about the sales referendum, sales tax referendum. So a very good presentation, Bob, by the way.
Thank you.
So it just gave me more ammunition.
www. dot
Exactly.
Pave the way, Pontiac.
Okay, we do have need for executive session, so we'll need a motion to go to executive session. So moved by John Rhodes, seconded by Jamie. Roll call, please.
Joe Benini,
Yes.
Eckhoff,
Yes.
Callis, Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Bradshaw,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Barr.
Give us about 3 minutes and we'll go to executive session.